Happy holidays. Happy 2024. I'm so excited to be here with you. It is January 1st, the first day of 365 that are bound to be epic. And I have some cute things to share with you. I've got some things that I did that you need to know about. And let's start with a thing I did. I bought a new car. Hang on and I'll show you a picture. She's got a big bow on her head. It's just fabulous. But I did a thing a few days ago that blew me away. I bought a 6-foot whiteboard and it flips over and it's got a little holder and it's all fancy schmancy. And I have all these brand new whiteboard markers. And my daughter was here the other night. I wanted to run her through some math on her budget. And I went over to my whiteboard and and I got the calculator and I'm writing and get the calculator. And, I was being mom, right? And she was being like 20 something. And it ended up going really well. Now, the next day, I went over to my whiteboard to erase it because I wanted to do something else on there. And I realized that I had used permanent marker. That's a permanent marker. It says right on it, permanent. I should know better. Now, I know I'm not the only person who's ever done this, right? So what do? Go online, go to YouTube, and I discovered there are actually 5 ways to remove permanent marker from a whiteboard. So if you've ever done that, just go look it up, and it's really easy. And in this particular case, they tell you to just take the regular whiteboard marker and just write over it, scribble over it, and then take your eraser and it comes up, and indeed it comes up like that. But it had me thinking, the marker says permanent. I wish I had one to show you. Permanent. Until you know how to erase it, right? And I was thinking about all the people this week that have spent so much time writing in their journals or capturing somewhere what they did in 2023, which of their goals they met, which of the goals they didn't, what do they want to accomplish in 2024. I, for the first time in my adult life, got myself a handy dandy old-fashioned journal. I usually put everything on my computer. And I thought, I also wrote my book by hand, which is a whole different story. And maybe this would be really good for me. So I started thinking, what if those thoughts that we have about ourselves and we think we are, hey, Luann, and we think that they're permanent, like they're so a part of our personality. We've been told since we were this big, oh, you have a big mouth like your aunt, or, oh, you're, brash like your uncle, or, these parts of us that are never said as a compliment. They are never said as a way to encourage us and lift us up. What there are ways to keep us small. And we all have these thoughts. I don't care how much therapy you've done, how much coaching you've been through, how many self-help books you've read, how many group processes you've been in. We have parts of our personality that we wish we could erase. For me, I'll tell you, I'll go first. And if anybody wants to jump in and put something in the comments, tell me what yours is. I have big energy. You might have noticed that, which is fabulous if I'm talking in front of 5,000 or 10,000 people. But in a room of 10 people, it can be a little extra, or so I am told. I think I'm perfect. And so I've heard my whole life, you need to just dial it back, Nancy, dial it back, quiet it down, And so this is a part of me that I just assumed was permanent because I've heard about it my whole life. So how do we get rid of it? I know, put in the comment, I know that you have this too. And just like that marker was permanent and wasn't, because it is sparkling clean, my whiteboard. So were these thoughts that we have so been taken for granted that are just never going to leave us. They're never going to leave us. They are indelible, as a play on words. So what do you do to not really get rid of these things about yourself that you get lots of comments on, but look at them in a new perspective? How do you take something that's you think of as a permanent part of your personality and morph it, transform it a little bit, all right? So the first thing you have to do is acknowledge that until the day we're born, our brains evolve. There was a time when I was growing up, where we thought that the brain stops growing at a certain age. I don't remember what that age is, but some age your brain just stops growing, right? And now, of course, we know that your brain is able to be malleable until the day we die, literally. Yeah. And so therefore, it leads me to believe that we can change what we think about ourselves, the things we think are permanent. We can change those things as well. So you've heard people say forever, your biggest assets are also your biggest liabilities. And let me explain what that means. I just did. So when I'm speaking in a massive auditorium and my voice needs to carry, but more than the microphone, I need to have the presence of someone who's comfortable talking to thousands and thousands of people, right? And as I said, when I'm in a room with just a dozen people, probably that's way too much. So just recognizing that I don't always have to be talking high pitch and extreme, that you will hear me and you will get my point without my constantly having to do this. You see what I'm saying? So the asset and the liability. Perhaps for you, it's you embarrass easily. Perhaps you're the shy one in the room, the introvert, and you don't want to be the center of attention. And your whole life, Aunt Mabel has pointed out to you how uncomfortable you are when everybody pays attention to you. And of course, she then proceeds to draw the whole room into paying attention to you so you can feel mortified and for the rest of your life, right? Because those are kinds of events that happen that they feel indelible. I had an aunt, and I felt comfortable talking about this because she has passed, and she was weight obsessed. Well, my whole family is weight obsessed, but she was weight obsessed. And when I was a kid, a teenager, I was more than chubby. I carried a lot of extra weight. So she would bring me for my birthday clothes. She was in the clothing industry, and I'd hold up the pants and they would be like a size 6. And I was like a size 16. And she would say to me, "Oh, Nan, just lose weight, then you'll fit into them." So of course, everybody in the room is staring at me to look at my reaction. To this day, I have to just breathe through that story so that I don't let it trigger me again. So what happened? As an adult, I was obsessed about my weight. And I really cared what you thought about how thin or fat I was. I really cared about that. Like that makes any difference. Like that somehow is a factor in whether you learn from me or not. And it took me until this ripe old age to really not give a fuck about what you think about whether I'm fat, thin, or somewhere in between, right? But what I did was I was able to apply what I learned from this aunt to every area of my life. And you can do that too. So I think a great place to start for the new year is to make a list of the personality traits you have, which you really think you could tone back or tone down or dial back, and which serve you sometimes, but 80% of the time they don't serve you. Just write it down, because that tells you that you're aware of it. And awareness is 95% of it. The minute we're aware of a part of our personality that doesn't serve us, or anything else for that matter, a skill that we're not strong in, right? Or a skill we're too strong in, the minute we're aware that we rely on what we're thinking rather than on our heart and rather than on a blend of that, that awareness is, it will take you very far in healing whatever wounds you think you have. And I have learned many, many times and many, many years ago that often the things that we think are blemishes are things that people love about us. So the next thing I would do with that list is I'd say, how much do you want to keep it? On a scale of 1 to 10, how much does it bother you that you are an introvert's introvert? How much does it bother you? Bye, Luann. Thanks for joining me. How much does it bother you? Not how much does it bother your relatives or your partner or your kids. Everything's going to bother your kids at some point, right? How much does it bother you? And let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 doesn't bother you at all, 10, it bothers you at 10, okay? I would say 5 and up, work on it. 5 below it, leave it for another time. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Of course it does. So I want to leave you with the thought, the things that we think are most permanent in our lives are malleable just like everything else. There is nothing in our lives, I shouldn't say that. I'm 5'10" and a half. I'm never going to be 5'2", I hope, because that would not be a good thing, right? And so, but most things in our lives, we can change. Most things in our lives, we can decide how we want to be with them. So in this year, this brand new year, when you probably, a lot of you are starting brand new journals, ask yourself, who do you want to be this year? Who do you want to be? And because we tend to focus on what we want to do. And I don't want you focusing on that, because who you are ripples out to everything you do. So if you start with on the inside, who are you? It will impact everything you do. So start there first, and I'll see you tomorrow. All right. If you have any questions, leave them in the chat or message me. All right. Again, happy New Year. And I'm going to say that dialogue. Happy New Year.